Hello, my name is Patrick Usher, and in this video I wish to discuss the fact that if you have POTS, there will be many people in your life, both friends and family and just strangers you encounter, who will at some level dismiss your illness. This is very, very disheartening when it happens. It's very irritating, it's very invalidating, and it's very isolating. And it's not acceptable. If I remember back to the time when I was at my sickest, this was something that pushed me pretty close to the edge, was when people did not get what I was going through. And I had very close family members, and I mean very close, not believe me that I was unwell. One in particular who would say things like, "You've decided to get unwell," or "You've read about this mystery condition on the internet and you've suddenly got it. I wonder why." As if that's at all a scientific reason why someone could be so unwell. So I knew I was unwell. My heart rate showed that I was unwell. My face showed it, everything showed it. And yet, one would have the sense that some people would not believe you. Because, well, some people are just very, very difficult. But also because POTS is not yet well enough known. It's only since the 1990s that people have started to study it. And it's even later than that research has started to filter through to my part of the world, although I'm in America right now, but in terms of, as you can see, but in terms of Ireland and especially, but also the UK, that research has taken longer to get over the water, as it were, from America, where most of the research into POTS takes place. And in fact, in Dublin, to my knowledge, there is only one POTS consultant. So that's for the whole, I don't know if there's one in other parts of Ireland. So it might just be there's just one in the whole country, right? So that's what you're dealing with. So people don't know about it. They're not taught about it in medical school as professionals, and so they're not going to know any more about it than you do. So that's another isolating factor. But it's also because it's not given that respect that it deserves as a condition yet. Then the sort of natural instinct amongst quite a few medical professionals will be to dismiss the idea that what the person is suffering with is a real condition. They are regarded as malingering or overly anxious or playing nuts, right? And those sort of ideas that belong in medicine from the 1950s or earlier. So that can be very, very frustrating. It's very invalidating, as I say, because what you have is a very serious neurological problem in which the whole autonomic nervous system, which is essential to overall health, has gone haywire. And you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy. So what you have is very, very real. But you may have family members who don't take it seriously. You may have friends who don't get it, who may say things like, "Are you sure you have that? Are you not just a bit stressed?" Or who may... There's another one that happened to me. Say, "Oh, I'm sure you'll be much better when you just have some nice countryside walks and just some good food for a while." As if countryside walks were on the agenda. Anyway, and so one will not be seen by a lot of people. And by that I mean your emotions and the reality of your situation will not be seen, and that will feel invisible. And that's really hard. And a lot of the people who do that, on a side note, tend to be the kind of people who don't really see themselves either. But that's another point. People who aren't very good at empathy tend to be the ones who, if they can, will dismiss the illnesses of others. So those kind of toxic people in your life will be even more toxic when you are so vulnerable, will be even more infuriating in their inability to validate what you see, and what you see yourself to be happening to yourself, and what you feel yourself to be happening to yourself. Because what you feel is right, and what you feel is true. And there's so much research into what's going wrong with POTS. And on top of that, I add the limbic system impairment idea as explaining those pre-existing research findings. But all of those pre-existing research findings are damn serious. They're damn serious. And don't you let anyone tell you that what you have is not real. Don't you let anyone tell you that, you'll get better with some walking, or you'll feel fine soon. I'm sure anything that invalidates it. Obviously, don't try not to become a victim, although that's hard because in a sense you are a victim, of course. But what I mean is try not to emotionally overreact to these people, but don't let their comments and the inability to see what's really happening to you weigh you down, because they haven't got a clue. Right? They haven't got a clue. And even when I had recovered, right, then it's a much less of a problem. But even now, you get, some people get it, and they think, wow, I know what you went through, and gosh, isn't it amazing, and how much better you look now, and oh, I'm so proud of you, and all that. And people who are really supportive and loving. And there are other people, and you almost see them thinking, yeah, he got better from his mystery illness. Bless him, bless him. And things like that. And even when I've given my book to some people, I can see that, and they're sort of thinking yeah, well, he got better from his illness that he never really had, and his book may help other people to get better from the illness that they don't really have either. Yeah, he's helping the crazies, and he's one of them himself. And you can see that, and in fact people have said things closer to that to me. Some people, they just will not get it. They do not grasp the severity of POTS, right? When I was first trying to work out what all this was, my doctor said it might be motor neuron disease. It is a desperately serious condition. It was awful, right? And people don't get it. Partly maybe it's the acronym POTS. It doesn't sound great. It reminds people of... It just doesn't sound as serious as it is. And I think defining the condition in terms of standing is unhelpful for various reasons. And I might do a video on that. I think it always will be called that because that's what's been embedded now. But I think it is an unhelpful name ultimately. And actually, no, I do have a video called What Should POTS Really Be Called? And I believe it should be called Limbic System Induced Net Deficiency. But we're stuck with POTS, and for some reason I think it doesn't have, as a title for an illness, the gravity of what actually it is. So one has to deal with these things. And just don't let anyone weigh you down or diminish or dismiss your truth. Because you are suffering from a very serious illness. And anyone who dismisses it should not be in your life. You should cut them out. Because they're no friend if that's their attitude. Right? They're no friend. And again, if you choose to do the dynamic neural retraining system, which I believe to be the most effective treatment for POTS ever created, again, you may get the dismissals, because people may think, oh, it's a mind-body program. Yeah. Just thinking happy thoughts, are you? Mm-hmm. That'll cure you. Sure. And so on and so forth like that. Or if you do get better, then they'll think that's proof that it was all psychosomatic anyway. So, in some ways you can't win with those sort of people. And you just have to cut them out of your life, minimize their impact on you, and carry on and know what's true for you, and surround yourself with those people who do support you. And remember, these other people, they're not supporters, they're not friends. Yes, find those who do not drain you, who are not toxic, who know what you are going through, and take this as an opportunity to change and minimize engagements with those people in your life who do not really see you, do not really validate you, do not really recognize what it is that you are going through. So that's my message on this. I hope it's helpful. I think it's a very common problem that those with POTS have to go through. And I hope that one day it'll be more established in the general cultural conception what POTS really is and why it's so devastating, and that therefore these sorts of prejudices one will not have to face anymore. They're even, in a sense, luckily, I'll say one last point. Luckily, POTS, there's no doubting its existence amongst the medical profession, even though many people don't know about it. There's no doubting it because it's a tilt table test and there are criteria and there's a lot of research and people know what's going on wrong with the blood vessel dysfunction and so on and so forth. But to take the example of a related condition, ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, although there's been a lot of research into that, and I believe it's quite clear what's going on in chronic fatigue syndrome as another limbic system impairment, and I might go into that in a video at some point, but there is a sizable portion, for example, of the English press which dismisses and diminishes chronic fatigue syndrome at every opportunity. There's one particular journalist who writes for the Spectator and I think the Telegraph. I have nothing against either publication, and I quite like the Spectator at times, but I think that he in particular, he has this thing about chronic fatigue syndrome, and he just goes at people and says it's all made up, it's all in their head, and so on and so forth. And it is ridiculous that kind of thing is allowed to be published. You meet people with ME, they're in wheelchairs, they've got oxygen being pumped into them, at the most severe end. They're skin and bones, and they're told there's nothing. These people, like that journalist, who's very influential, is writing that kind of crap, right? All because medical researchers, although some of them do their best to research, because they haven't come up with the absolute root cause yet. They haven't looked in the brain. They haven't looked at the limbic system. They haven't studied the limbic system. Instead, they're studying all the parts of the body that goes wrong. But they're not seeing that the body parts are going wrong as a secondary result of the primary problem, which is a neurological illness. So because they haven't identified that, then they say there's no cause. And therefore this ridiculous narrative is allowed to be perpetuated. It is disgraceful, right? It is disgraceful. There are millions of people who have chronic and mysterious illnesses, right, which should not be mysterious at all. And nor should they be chronic, because there is a way out. The only reason they're mysterious is because this big organ between our ears has not been studied in relation to them. There's no doubt about going off and studying multiple sclerosis. In that case, they studied the brain, or motor neuron disease, they studied the brain. But with these conditions, they haven't studied the brain, right? And that's why these conditions haven't been named correctly. They're all limbic system impairments. Chronic fatigue syndrome, limbic system-induced mitochondrial dysfunction is a better name. POTS syndrome, limbic system-induced NET deficiency. Irritable bowel syndrome, limbic system-induced digestive issues. Fibromyalgia, limbic system-induced, how would you call it? I'd say maybe limbic system pain center impairments or something like that, because the limbic system processes pain, and when the limbic system goes into crisis, you develop pain everywhere because your sensory, your perceptive faculties change in a crisis mode to perceive everything as painful. Multiple chemical sensitivity, which is limbic system-induced changes to the smell centers in your brain. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, limbic system-induced changes to sensory perception. Very real, sounds alien, but it's real and it can happen because that brain can change so much. So because they don't look in the root cause, where it's all really happening, they come up with the wrong names, and they all have syndromes attached at the end, which means they don't know what the root cause is. And so that allows people who have no clue what it's like to have a limbic system impairment to spew out nonsense, right? Absolute and utter nonsense. Totally prejudiced, no clue, no understanding, all because the research has not focused on where it needs to focus. So, most of my videos do not contain rants. In fact, I think that's my first. But that is a rant. But I feel it very passionately. I think it's unacceptable. And if anyone in your family or friends ever dismisses your illness, cut them out of your life politely, but cut them out because they are not worth it. Right? It is unacceptable. When you're in recovery, you don't need these people in your life. Take it as an opportunity when you start the brain rewiring exercises to decide, make out a list. Who do I want in my life? Who do I not want in my life? And those who have not validated or understood the sufferings you are going through are not your friends. And they never will be. They never will be. Okay? Because if they don't get that much, then they won't get the little stuff either. So that's what I want to say about that, and I wish you a pleasant day wherever you are. I hope you found this video helpful, and I look forward to your comments.